Well, everybody, wonderful to be back here in Sao Paulo. And it's great to see you. Many faces I recognize, many new ones. But I do come to Sao Paulo at least once a year. Uh, we have now 23 different countries where we operate, and we now service customers in over 100 different countries. So it's a lot of countries to visit. I have traditionally spent about 80% of my time going around the world again and again every month. And it is wonderful to spend time with so many executives who are just trying to figure out, what does all this mean? What do we do? How do we think about things like innovation, modernization? How do we think about reinventing business, no matter what industry we're in? And we have so much going on out there that it really is very difficult for executives right now to decide, what is the priority? We hear again and again, as Edenise said, AI, AI. I don't know about you, but I'm pretty tired of hearing the word AI, as though AI will solve every business problem you have. And we know that's just not true. But understanding where we can use AI, how do we use AI? How do we think about much bigger than just AI? So I want to spend some time with you just sharing some thoughts, some ideas. And I hope, again, there's some ideas that help you think through what you have to imagine for your business. I like to think of everything we talk about as the art of the possible. It's hard to understand what we can do if we don't understand the technology and some of the limitations and the capabilities. So we're all on a learning journey. You watch every day. Now, we have a big office in Silicon Valley, so we're right in the middle of Anthropic and OpenAI. We're in the middle of it. And every day, like you, there's a news item. And there's news items that are changing the world that just come out in the news. And then we have to figure out, what are we going to do with all this? So I do want you to understand that one of the reasons I'm always in Brazil is because Brazil is truly leading in many uses of AI, many modernization and innovation projects. Our clients here are some of the most advanced in the world, moving faster, with bigger imaginations. And it's been true for all the years that we've grown here in Brazil. So I consider my time here with Brazil executives, all of you, an important part of my learning to understand the vision, to understand unique complexities. Brazil has, of course, like every country, some unique items like tax reform, where you get to spend a very large amount of your time, focus, energy, and money working on taxes instead of being able to reimagine other parts of the business. And that's a uniquely Brazilian experience. And it has been for all the years that we've worked here. Other countries are lucky. They get to spend more focus and time in other parts of the business. So, as always, our street smarts around the world are information sharing and idea sharing events. The ground rules are always we don't allow media to write about names and questions and things like that because we need always an open space. This is an executive interchange. And all over the world, we have many competitors who even sit in the same room and we share information and ideas that are bigger than just individual companies. So it's very important that we maintain our rules that have allowed us to grow our events to hundreds of people in all different countries. And the information that we're able to share is the combination of all the experiences and information we gather along this journey. So let's take a look at what we mean by ERP software is dead. I know you guys are here, a lot of you are SAP or Oracle customers going, ERP is dead? I missed the news? When did this happen? Well, let's start back with the first thing we need to understand. The world is not falling apart. There are pieces of challenges. Our operations in Dubai had to move to Egypt temporarily for war challenges. But the world is not falling apart. The world is rewiring. There's a difference. Global trade is absolutely still happening. But the rules are all changing. We now have content requirements in different countries. We have this deglobalization where countries are really focusing in on their own manufacturing base, their own capabilities, reducing dependence on other countries for mission critical and especially strategic items. We just talked about taxation, tariffs and taxation. United States started a lot of tariff wars over the last year, and they've caused a lot of problems. Of course, Brazil was lucky enough to receive a 50% coffee tariff, which I think lasted for a week, maybe two. But these things we have to adapt to. All these things that are happening, these are all part of the world that we live in. And in case you didn't notice what was going on in your license agreements on any SaaS products, you're going to find them changing licenses to be consumption-based contracts. Everybody's changing from users to consumption-based. Everyone wants to charge you based on your usage. And you're going to find out, if you haven't already, that data is the new currency of the world. And you are going to be charged not to own your data, but all the uses of your data. Your data. You are going to be paying to use your data. That's what's coming. And you probably may have seen it slipping into contracts already. But this is going to change the way software is licensed and will completely change your cost models. And no one understands what it's going to be yet. So don't think there's a magic number. There's not a calculator. It's all happening by the day. And then AI and robotics. I mean, this is the world we're living in is not only about AI. You've probably been following the change in robotics. Even Elon Musk he has stopped production of certain cars in the United States. They're converting the factory to build robots instead, the Optimus robot. Now, many of you in manufacturing have probably already been buying a lot of robots in China because they're a lot cheaper. But robots are coming, and they are going to take the physical jobs, married up with AI. So the whole new world is upon us. Now, when I talk about ERP software is dead, What you need to understand, this is why. Every one of you understands your ERP system, what it takes to make changes. Changing an SAP system, the code, the testing, the moves to production, they take a lot of cycles, a lot of work, and more importantly, a lot of time. We don't have a lot of time. Speed is one of the most important factors in business today and for governments. Speed to execute a transaction and speed to make changes. You guys all probably have a list of customizations that your companies want that you haven't been able to get to yet. Well, when a tariff changes today and you have to respond to that, you have to figure out how are you going to deal with that. When you had a 50% coffee tariff added, you're in the coffee business and it's effective tomorrow. You have systems, you have shipping, you have orders in progress. And then a week later, it doesn't count. That's gone away. You have to change the system back. This takes more time to change in the systems than we have to get it done. We live in a world where we're constantly making adjustments. Many of you are buying companies, you're selling companies. Each of those takes a tremendous amount of labor. So what's happened is we've come to the realization that the idea of customizing and configuring big ERP systems, doesn't matter whether you're on ECC at SAP or S/4HANA, it doesn't matter, or EBS or any other ERP. Big enterprise systems take a lot of work to constantly bring them in line with the business and the fast changing world. So we've all come to the conclusion that customization of the software is no longer the strategic direction. We had to find a better way. Even SAP agrees. They call it clean core. They don't want any customizations of the system. And you know why? Well, because their Joule product relies on fixed tables. Can't work with customizations as is. But the basic premise is we are now doing customizations above and outside the system. That is a major architectural change. For all of us who have been doing ERP and enterprise for 20, 30 years, this is a different approach. And we now have all these reasons to make that change. But like I was saying about AI, it is not about AI. What's going on around you is fundamental changes to infrastructure. Just as cloud provided optionality, it provided us the elasticity, so we didn't have to buy 20 EMC boxes. We could just simply put it in the cloud, have it auto expand based on need. That was a very big transition for a lot of companies. And then they got the bill for it. It was pretty expensive. But at least they didn't get a denial of service issue because they ran out of capacity, either compute or storage. So it provided flexibility for us. We didn't have to build big data centers of our own. This is different. This is a next generation of infrastructure change. This is what you need to understand. The world around us, and I'm sure there's a one of you that is not in a fiercely competitive business. And you know what? Fierce competition sets the price in the market. The only way to make a profit when your costs are going up and you can't charge more because the market won't bear it is you're going to have to reduce total operating costs. There's no choice. This is what I spend most of my time working with organizations around the world doing. Figuring out how to lower the total cost of operations in order to have the right profit and be able to sell at the most competitive price. It's the world we live in. Anyone in telco could tell you that handset that keeps going down in price every month because there's so much competition, but they have to invest billions of US dollars in infrastructure. The handsets that you buy, they have to subsidize. I meet with telcos around the world, and the number one thing they have on their strategy board, how are we going to make money in 5 years? Well, they have to be competitive in price. You have to have a good, not necessarily a great product, but a good product. And you have to be able to get your costs down to drive a profit. You have labor costs going up. You have increased costs of tariff and transportation and shipping. And of course, taxes. So the understanding, how do you translate that into our favorite topics of ERP, which we really use ERP as a word to describe the systems that run the business day to day, the transaction systems. But we need to distinguish between systems and processes. How we get the processes done for running the business and a government agency the same. There's 10 core processes. I mean, we have to pay people, we have to build things, we have to sell things, we have to collect money. The question is, what is the technology we're going to use to do those things in the future? What's changing? And when we say ERP software is dead, ERP processes are alive because that's what we use. Remember, we used to do it with rocks. Then we did it with paper, lots of paper. Then we got computers to do it. And then we got ERP software to make it easier and spreadsheets. I don't know what I would do without a spreadsheet. But they're just tools to achieve the processes. So as you reimagine the next 10 years, 20 years of your business, don't confuse the processes with the tools that you're going to use to do the work. So we're going to focus in on what you can do to run those processes faster, better, cheaper, which is what you have to do. Bring down the total cost of operations and do it with more agility, because that's what we have to do. Tariffs today, changes in taxes, changes in shipping. We need agility. We need to be able to move quickly to make these changes. And with speed, the value, how fast we can get them done to take advantage. So this is where we pivot to what we call agentic AI ERP. This is the new terminology you're going to have to get used to. And of course, those of you around the company that you're working with are going to be like, what in the heck do you mean agentic AI ERP? This is a new set of technology that could be applied right over the top of your existing system. ERP systems are primarily systems of record, store a lot of data. We are going to put AI over the top, agentic AI, and we're going to be able to turn the system of record into a system of action. That is a key. There's a lot that's going to happen in the top layer. As I mentioned, we're talking about not doing modifications in the software. We're doing it above the software. And we're doing it in this layer. And we can save, we believe, 30 to 50% in total cost to run these processes. That is a significant amount of savings. And that can come from reducing the amount of labor it takes to run those processes, to reduce the amount of labor that it's going to take to grow, so you won't need as much. Now, Brazil's a little different than, for example, Japan or Korea, where they have such a declining population that there literally will not be enough workers for them in 10 years. If they do not automate and reduce the amount of labor it takes to run their business, or if you have Japan or Korean operations, there is a good chance they will not be able to find enough workers to grow or to run their current business. So there is a different imperative in different parts of the world, different labor costs. And I'm going to show you in a second why this is so important. But first, when I talk about putting over the top, this is a very different architecture than a rip and replace. All of us in ERP, we know every few years they want us to do a major upgrade or a migration. And by the way, an upgrade is you're not changing the table structures. A migration means it's basically a whole new package and you're moving data into different structures. Something like an ECC6 to an S4 is an actual migration by that definition. It's a much bigger project than just an upgrade. But those of you who are even on S4 may be on an older version and they want you to move to a new one, which is a fairly sizable upgrade. But the idea of what we used to refer to as rip and replace no longer works. The economics don't work. It's not that, hey, which one of us doesn't want to drive a new car every year? That's great. But the economics don't always work. We've reached a point where these systems are so big and so integrated into the core of our operations that the idea that we could go in and just tear it out and replace it and spend the next 3 years or 4 years working on a project like that doesn't really work economically. Of course, there's always some nice new features to anything, including the new car. But do those features and capabilities justify the total cost of the project? It's an ROI discussion, not an emotional discussion. And these days, we're much better, all of us, at not only being a little more skeptical, we do a little more ROI analysis than we used to, but we also look at opportunity cost. If I did not spend this money to do this project and all my resources and focus for the next 4 years, what else could I be doing for my organization? And this is where the AI over the top becomes so interesting because our ability to do real value, real understanding of what the business needs comes out. We have to think differently about the words innovation and modernization. Now, when I helped build PeopleSoft and been was at SAP, Of course, we always wanted customers to associate innovation and modernization with upgrades and migrations. That was the way we tried to connect it for everyone. Well, if you're not doing an upgrade and you're not doing my migration, you are not modernizing, you are not innovating. But that's just not true. In our new world, we have the ability to modernize, we have the ability to innovate without changing out our core ERP and other enterprise products, which means we can extend the lifespan significantly for any of those products. I'm not talking about just your standard ERP. I'm talking about VMware. I'm talking about an entire enterprise class of product. Now, when I owned support policy at PeopleSoft, I forced to change every 3 years for customers. It drove a lot of consulting business. We did a lot of upgrades. It grew. Accenture was happy. Everyone was happy because we drove a lot of business for everybody. But did the true lifespan of that product, could it be measured at 3 years? There's some of those systems still running beautifully 30 years later. We artificially created those dates, just as other software companies do. They create the dates, tell you what the retirement dates are so that they can force the change. That has nothing to do with a product's value to you and how long it's valuable to an individual organization. That is measured by you. But we tried to create a situation where you felt left out, where you felt like if you weren't doing that upgrade or migration, you must be falling behind because you're not modernizing and you're not innovating. That's just not true. So let's put the fears aside. Let's understand these were created for you. We curated these fears for you. That's the way the industry has designed it. But the reality is what we're dealing with, where you're looking at your own road, you're looking at your own operation and making your own decisions. And let me tell you, some of you in this room may have followed in your career every one of the upgrades or migrations that the software vendors told you to do. Microsoft tells you, Windows 11 is where you need to be. Everyone's telling you. Salesforce is telling you, you need to be on Lightning. Everybody is telling you they want you on their new AI release. And for the first time, there is not, I guarantee one of you in here, that if you have 100 enterprise products and everyone wants you on the AI release, there is not enough people, time, or money for you to do all those projects. It's not possible. So for the first time, whether you like it or not, you are going to have to make decisions about what you're going to invest in and what you're going to extend the life of. And then you're going to have to figure out how that impacts all the integrations that touch all these systems. This is a very different moment to be a CIO and really confusing as a CFO because you're dependent on your CIO to figure out how all this is coming together and put it into some sort of professional budget. So let's accept the reality and put away the fears. Now, this one is really interesting. As we dip our toes into AI, and I'm sure every one of you has some project going, even if it's a small chat GPT and just learning about prompts, you're still in the early stages of exploration. What's fascinating is most people still do not understand yet the economics of AI. Why is Anthropic a $1 trillion company? Why are they growing revenues at, I think, $2 billion a week. Because most people don't understand that if you think of an AI agent as just an electronic person, electronic employee, every time the agent thinks, you pay money. And the higher level the thinking, just as you hire someone out of school, they're not experienced, you're going to pay them less. But if you want someone who's 10 years of experience and they're making more complex decisions for your business, you pay more tokens every time they think. So the more complex the thinking, the more you're going to pay. Now, once you understand that, it brings you a different understanding that whether the other consulting firms out there are running around telling you to build agents here and build agents there, except every time they're used, they cost you money. Let's remember, we're coming back to the fact that we are trying to innovate in the business and reduce our total cost. So the last thing I need are a bunch of agents that don't do much or cost me more to think than maybe I could hire local labor to do. Different labor markets. Understand your surroundings, your labor markets play a role in whether an agent might be, here might be not a profitable venture for a particular agent. Maybe if you were sitting in London with some outrageous cost per hour, maybe there the agent would be a better bargain. But this economics is really hard to get to understand in terms of figuring out costs. How do I, as a business person, when I hire someone, okay, I know their annual salary, I could figure that out. That's predictable for me. I could put it in a budget. But you'll find in the world of AI today, if you ask someone, well, what's the agent going to cost me to do the thinking instead of a live person? Well, it depends. That's really hard for a CFO, really hard for a budget. But that's what happens in this world today. You have to, in order to understand what the agent will cost you, you have to detail out what the questions are that it's going to answer. And it's measured by how big the answer is. And that's how much you're going to pay. You may have read about this crazy thing happening called, what do you call it? Called token maxing. And token maxing, companies in the United States have been doing this in a very bad way. They are coming after employees who are not using enough tokens. They're basically getting a list of all the people who are using AI and how many tokens they're using. And if you're not using enough tokens, they come to the employee and say, we don't think you're using AI enough. And so there's this crazy thing where employees are trying to use as much tokens as possible to look good and be rewarded in the company for spending the most amount of money. Now, how does this align with your focus on reducing cost with technology? This is a problem because what you don't want to be doing is rewarding people for activity. You want to reward people for outcomes, accomplishments. Don't tell me how much you spent. Tell me how much you got done. What did you achieve with that spend? So we have a real problem in this phase of AI deployment about understanding. Don't reward activity. Focus on actual outcomes. But this is something you need to manage because it's happening all over the world where people seem to believe this is how we tell whether employees are using AI effectively. It's not. And so many projects have failed. Many projects. I'm sure some of you in this room have had projects you kicked off and you thought would be great and they fail. They fail in the real world because they weren't well thought out. Now, my recommendation in the world of AI, when we talked about AI does not solve everything, take a very pragmatic approach. First of all, take a step and look at your processes. There's a lot of issues that happen simply because processes are not well thought out or could be improved. In some cases, you may have installed your ERP system 10 years ago, 20 years ago, but your business has changed. Your processes need to change to match the business. If you do this step, again, it doesn't require AI. It requires you to look at your business. You can get a good deal of savings, streamlined capabilities, reduced labor through that layer alone. Once you complete that, let's focus in on automation. There are many tasks we can automate that don't require logical thinking. They just require execution. We can automate that. And we can do that and reduce labor further, streamline and speed process execution. Now, once we do all that, and we've done all of this without any AI, now we can start to thoughtfully look at where we think we can start replacing human thought, which, by the way, I sit in meetings and people start talking about human beings as organic intelligence, OI versus AI. Talk about dehumanization, right? But we start to look for where we could make a difference. That is the right approach so that you're not just jumping in to put agents in and spending money where you could solve the problem without spending that money every single time a thought happens. Create a template. Take the emotion out of it. Create a template and think about these factors. This will help you think through whether an agent might make sense for a particular process. There are more and more of these templates that are being developed. And there's a good book that I can leave with Ed Anise in terms of the name, and happy to get it out to everyone. I like it. It's got some great templates and it's a very methodical process. The idea of moving into AI and agents requires a very steady, methodical, not a crazy, let's just automate everything, right? That doesn't work. Very methodical, unemotional approach to determining where agents make sense. So go through this, build a template. If it goes through and you like all the answers here, then you can move to the next step. So you can take that list that passed the first test and then work on a cost benefit analysis. It's all new for us, right? We haven't done this kind of cost benefit. It's a new technology. So we have to ask the right questions and make sure that, again, with these templates, that we don't allow people to push other than through prioritization. Everything should be looked at in a priority order, from the biggest impact for the organization to the smallest. And if you do that in alignment with this and you build your grids and you run this, you will see a few very key points will rise to the top. and it will become clear to you where to focus your AI initiative out of the gate. Now, again, the local Brazil considerations, local labor markets, different than around the world. So pay attention because you have to understand, are these processes you're going to run in Brazil? Are these processes you're running in Europe or Asia? Knowing where the processes are going to be run is a very important part of making these determinations on the cost benefit side as well. Now we got to pay for it. We all know that boards are wonderful organizations that tell everyone that they're cloud first and they're an AI company, right? But then they cut your budgets for IT because profits are thin and that's where they start. And you don't understand how they could want all this new technology and they're so excited by it and then they cut your budget. And you're sitting there having to pay for it out of your operating costs. And that's where, we've been very focused with helping people self-fund innovation. There's no way in the average budget when you only have 9% or 10% of your operating budget that you could put into innovation. There's no way that you could afford all of this new technology on that 9 to 10%. There's too much going on for that budget. You must increase the amount of your budget that is devoted to innovation and modernization to stay competitive, to build new competitive advantage. This is just a numbers fact. Companies with 9 to 10% devoted to modernization innovation will not be competitive in the years ahead because your competitors will spend more and they will leapfrog over you in technology if you don't spend more. So how do we do that within your existing budget? This is where we've been using our Smart Path methodology, which essentially most of you clients in the room have already taken the first step, which is you get off the maintenance of the vendors, you save the money, you save the upgrades that you don't have to do, and you're able to redirect all the people, time, and money from those projects into innovation and modernization, where we're able to put the new technology right over the existing system. These core transaction systems have tens of years of longevity. Transaction systems do not generally become outdated. The processes have to be adjusted based on changes to the business, but they're very rigorous systems. But the innovation ability to do the transformations on top changed the game. So those of you who have already moved to Rimini Street have already taken the first step. Now you could move more products and free up more money. That's a big point. You could have us or others run the system in order to reduce the amount of your internal labor and allow you to focus your own internal team on innovation and modernization, which is another thing we're watching happen. And then we devote all of this to innovation. Now, I told you guys last year we partnered up with Bill McDermott and ServiceNow as our preferred layer. It is the best workflow system in the world. Many of you are running it today for your ITSM. It's not cheap, but it's the only one that incorporates all the different components of where we want to go with workflow as well as management of agents. But if you look at this type of architecture, what you're going to see that's coming out now, the words you're going to be hearing in the world of AI: governance, security, privacy. We all have to deal with global privacy laws that are very complex around data. Security is an issue unlike anything you can imagine. We all live and worry about security every day. It scares everybody. And if you're not scared, then you're missing something. Okay. The world under AI, the dark side of AI, is changing the security threat landscape. And if you're not aware of it today, let me tell you something. If you may have heard the term mythos in the last few weeks, and there was a brand new one today from OpenAI. Mythos is one of the scariest things every software company has ever seen, and all of us should be terrified of. This new piece of software from Anthropic can find the vulnerabilities in a piece of software that would normally take us years to discover in less than a minute. Every software product has thousands of vulnerabilities not yet understood. Just a fact. Over time, vulnerabilities are discovered and we respond to them. But Mythos was handed over to Oracle and other software companies to give it a try. In a matter of minutes, it found thousands of vulnerabilities. And it proves exactly the theory that Rimini Street has run on for security. It is impossible to focus on code-based security. There are too many vulnerabilities in the software itself. The only solution is what we've been pushing out in our products for years. It is virtual patching technology, essentially firewall. We must control the traffic coming in and out, and we must block when vectors of attack happen, because inside the product, there are simply too many. What are you going to do? Apply thousands of fixes, assuming that thousands of fixes were even available? They're not. So security, privacy, governance around AI. We don't just create agents. Every agent has to be security checked to make sure that someone can't hijack your agent and take it and use it against you. So the world of security, agents, privacy, all coming together. And this is going to be referred to as governance. We all have IT governance. We're especially public companies. We have to follow public company governance laws and regulations. You are going to have to learn about governance of agents. Now, if you had 7,000 employees running around doing things, updating financial records, you would have very strict controls. Who can update records? Who can move cash? If I have 7,000 electronic agents running around, I have to know that they're legitimate. I have to understand the rights that this agent's allowed to touch my cash, is allowed to update my financials. And what we're going to do now is Rimini Street's going to manage as a service all of this from our global command centers, where we're going to watch over using ServiceNow's Watchtower, Control Tower product to watch over up to 1 million agents simultaneously at any customer. And the ability to shut them down with a single button if something goes wrong or we don't like what we're seeing or we think something may have infiltrated the system. But this is a whole new world, folks. I mean, we're going to have to manage thousands of agents. How do you know which ones are legitimate? How are you going to know that we don't have a rogue agent that somebody introduced who's in that 7,000, who's going in and taking your cash and moving around your financials? We have a whole new level of governance and management. And it's going to require 24/7 monitoring to make sure that everyone's doing what they're supposed to be doing and staying within security boundaries. We're going to have to watch this all the time, just like you would want to watch people. So this is part of what we're seeing as the new architecture. As you start to think about deploying agents, you have to think about governance, security, and privacy. So we think that, if you follow the methodology, you can start deploying through POCs. Everything should be piloted, POCs, one piece at a time. And the difference between the investment models from what we had before to what we have now is we used to do these big upgrades, big money, number of years, big risk projects. And usually they go over budget. Somebody has to be responsible. Somebody gets fired, right? It's a common problem in big projects. What we're doing now is small projects at a time, one at a time. So you can do it within your existing budget. You save the money, you apply the money you save. You never have to go to the board for additional money. I know that sounds good. Nobody loves going to the board and saying, I need money for a big upgrade or migration, right? The ability to do this within your budget, one small piece, and then you get to put it in production and you get the value out of it, then you do the next one. So you get to do this in increments. It's a very different investment model. The risk is extremely low because you're doing an agent at a time, but you're making progress that's measurable inside the budget. Now, our friends at ePay, I hope I pronounced that right. I tried. We did a wonderful project with them. They were having some real challenges, and we put in this EDI order exception. They were having a lot of orders that were getting stuck. And so we came in over the top of their system and we put in a ServiceNow agentic component. And I hope you like the way this is because this makes it easy to understand the process, right? Everything's about the process. But look what we did. We lowered the number of steps. We said, okay, let's look at the process. How do we improve the process? Oops, sorry. How do we improve the process, reduce the number of steps, and introduce AI in the middle of it for decision making so that the decision process would allow, instead of a human, we could look at it, figure out why the order is stuck, take action, and solve the problem all by itself. And so this is the way, and we can show you how to design out these templates. And in fact, I think in the brochures that you got, we put our first catalog in there. And it's a catalog of the first 20 solutions like this that fit right over the top of your ECC or even an S4 or an Oracle product. And it fits over the top and solves individual business issues. But it gets you thinking about, what are these business problems, these discrete problems that we're trying to fix? And then we can focus in on that solution. But just look at the fact we took something that took hours before and it's now being resolved in a matter of a minute automatically. This is progress, one piece at a time. It's not big picture replacing all your systems. This is solving your real day-to-day issues one at a time. So again, I hope this gave you a couple thoughts, probably a couple scary things around the security, governance, I know we're all hoping to throw some agents out there, but unfortunately, once you start that process, as we say, it's one thing to be in a POC, but when you move that into production, you better be sure it's secure tested, it's going to be managed and governed, just like you would have. You would never put an employee without having human resources or a manager overseeing them. Agents must be overseen. So let's just think of them as electronic people, and everything that you would manage in a human, we need to manage for the electronics as well. So with that, thank you very much. I hope that was helpful.